If you have your Bibles, open them to Numbers chapter 22. Numbers chapter 22. In your Bible reading this week, you should have read about Balaam. And we want to talk about the lessons we can learn from Balaam's sin. All right? The lessons we can learn from Balaam's sin. Now, we're going to look at a little clip here on the screen. I want to see if you remember this TV show.
You're going to stay after all.
That was a good one years ago. Those of us that remember it. Mr. Ed. And of course, that's season 1, episode 1, when Wilbur finds out that Mr. Ed can talk. Quite an interesting thing. Well, I showed you that because in our text today, we meet Balaam and his talking donkey. Now, Balaam was considered, according to Josephus, as the greatest of the prophets at that time. Okay? Now, that may be an overstatement, because that was Josephus quoting other people. And I say that may be an overstatement because in Joshua chapter 13 and verse 22, Balaam is called a diviner. A diviner. So who was Balaam? Well, he was Balaam, son of Beor, at Pethor near the river. Now, he wasn't an Israelite, but archaeologists have dug up proof that Balaam was indeed a real person. In a discovery of an ancient text found in Jordan in 1967, it tells of activities of a man named Balaam. And this text makes it clear it's the same man in the Bible because he is referred to in the first 4 lines 3 times as Balaam, son of Beor. Exactly what's in the Bible. So, from this text and from Josephus and some other ancient things, what we learn about Balaam is this. He was basically a soothsayer who worshiped many gods, of which Yahweh may have been one. So, in our story, we definitely learn that God does talk to him. And so, that's where we want to go this morning, to see what we are supposed to learn from Balaam. So, the whole text for the whole story is Numbers 22, 23, 24, and 25. But we're not going to read all of that this morning, and you've read that already this week. But open your Bibles to number 22, because I am going to be referring to that somewhat. Now, what we know, recap the story real quickly. What we know is the Israelites have just defeated the Amorites, and now they're approaching the plains of Moab, and Balak, the king of the Moabites, is well aware of what just happened to the Amorites and all the other people that got in Israel's way, and he realizes he is not strong enough by himself to stop them. And so he sends to the Midianites for some help. Now the Midianites knew Balaam. They knew Balaam well. And so together, they sent a delegation to Balaam to ask him to come and curse the Israelites. Now, they tell him very plainly in verse 7, I think it is. Yeah. So they departed with the fees for divination in their hand, and they came to Balaam and repeated Balak's words to him. So they come and they say, we're going to pay you. Come curse the Israelites. And in verse 12, Balaam had told them to stay and spend the night. Maybe God would speak. And God said, do not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed. So he told them the next morning, I can't go with you. God said I can't go. And they go back to Balak, and they tell Balak, Balaam refused to come. They never said anything about God told him he couldn't come, but they just said he refused to come. And so Balak and the princes of Midian get together a more distinguished group of ambassadors who probably had a little more money. And they went down to Balaam and they said, Balaam, we really need you to come and do this thing for us. And Balaam answers them in verse 18. Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not do anything, either small or great, contrary to the command of my Lord. All right, so Balaam says, I can't go. But spend the night, and maybe God will speak to me again. So God does come in the night. And in verse 20, God said, if the men have come to call you, rise up and go with them, but only the word which I spoke to you shall you do. Okay? So God said, okay, Balaam, go. But you say only what I tell you to say, and nothing else. Nothing else. So Balaam starts out on his donkey, his trusted donkey for many years, who'd never done him any harm. And so they're on the road, and all of a sudden, the donkey sees something Balaam can't see. And the donkey heads over in the field, off the road. And Balaam gets angry. And Balaam starts beating on that old donkey. And so the donkey comes back in the road. And they're going down the road again, and they get to a very narrow pass. And the donkey sees that something again. And the donkey, trying to dodge it, bumps Balaam's foot up against the wall in that narrow pass. And Balaam gets angry and he starts wailing on that old donkey again. Stupid old donkey can't do nothing right. And just aggravated with the donkey. So they go down the road a little more. And as they're going down the road a little more, that donkey sees it again. And this time the donkey just laid down in the road. And when he laid down in the road, Balaam just started wailing away on that donkey again. When the donkey turned around and looked at him and said, why are you beating on me? Have I ever done you any wrong? Now what the amazing thing is here is that Balaam just starts talking to the donkey like he's used to talking to a donkey. You know, there may be some sense of humor in the story if you think it through. Okay? Some of God's sense of humor in the story if you think it through. I mean, who goes around talking to donkeys? And if a donkey talked back to you, if you did talk to one and the donkey talked back to you, would you be more like Wilbur and Mr. Ed and start running and telling everybody, you know, something, this is crazy. It can't happen. No. Balaam just starts carrying on a conversation with the donkey. And finally the donkey says, would you look up there? And Balaam's eyes were opened, and the angel was standing in the road with his sword drawn. He was ready to kill Balaam. Now see, this is where this story becomes odd. Because didn't God tell him to go? Wait, have you read the story lots of times? Didn't God tell him to go? Why is it that this angel is standing there ready to kill him? But the angel looks at Balaam and he says this, Balaam, you go ahead and go. But don't you say anything unless the Lord puts the words in your mouth. So Balaam went on. And he met Balak. And Balak took him up to one of the high places in the worship of Baal, where they could get a good view of the Israelites. And he saw them, and he blessed them. Now, Balak was mad. I called you here to curse them, and you blessed them. Let's go over here to this place so you get a better view. And they get a better view, and they see a bigger group of people. And Balaam stands up, and he blesses them. Now Balak's really mad. I called you here to curse these people, and you blessed them. Let's go over here to this other spot, and you get a different view of this group of people. So they went over to this other spot, got a different view. Balaam stood up, and the third time, he blessed them. Balak was angry. Balak said, Balaam, you better get yourself out of here right away. And so Balaam goes his way, Balak goes his way, and the children of Israel have been blessed. Now that's the story, right? That's the way we tell the story. That's the way we know the story. So the question comes up is, what was Balaam's sin? What was it? On the surface of the story, if we just look at the surface of it, we would have to ask that question. So we have to dig a little bit deeper. Now, Balaam is mentioned 3 times in the New Testament. 3 times in the New Testament. The first time is in Revelation 21 and verse 4. And in Revelation 21:4 it says, I have a few things against you, because you have there some who are holding the teaching of Balaam, who kept teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols and to commit acts of immorality. In 2 Peter 2:15 it says, forsaking the right way, they have gone astray and followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. And in Jude, verse 11, it says, woe to them, for they have gone the way of kings, and for pay they have rushed headlong into the error of Balaam, and have perished in the rebellion of Korah. So, 3 times in the New Testament, it refers to the sin of Balaam. But when we read the story on the surface, we don't necessarily see it. So let's go back and re-examine the text. Re-examine the text. In Numbers 22 and verse 7, the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the thieves for divination. You see, Balaam wasn't a true prophet of Yahweh. He was a diviner, a sorcerer, a magician, a soothsayer. This is what Balaam was. And they took the thieves for divination. Maybe Josephus was right in that particular territory, and in that time frame, they thought if they would curse their enemy before they went to war, they would win the battle quicker. And so maybe Balaam had been called for this numerous times. It's hard to say. So they send for him, and they're going to pay him. But he wouldn't go because God said, I can't go. So he wouldn't go. But then look down at verse 17. And it says, for I will indeed honor you richly, and I will do whatever you say to me. Please come curse this people. All right? So, and Balaam said, no, I can't go. If Balak would give me all the silver in his house, I can't go. But spend the night, and maybe God will speak to me again. And God came and said, okay, you can go. Here's the thing. When that second delegation comes back, they bring a blank check. And they tell Balaam, write ever how many zeros you want to put on that check. Whatever you want, it's yours. We'll give you anything and everything if you just come and curse these people. Now, Balaam's looking at that blank check. Man, how many zeros can you write on a blank check? That's what he's thinking. God knows his heart. Did God want him to go? No. But you know how it is when you get fretted or aggravated with a child that you're told no 1,000 times, and you finally said, well, just go on and do it then. That's where God was at. Okay? He was angry. He was fretted with Balaam. He had already told Balaam no. God doesn't have to tell you no twice. So he said, okay, you just go. That's why the angel was there. That's why the angel was ready to kill him, because God didn't want him to go. The donkey saved his life. And when Balaam saw the angel, in verse 34, Balaam says, I have sinned. I have sinned. What was his sin? The love of money. That's his sin. The love of money. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 10 says, for the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. And by longing for it, many have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So Balaam goes on, and he blesses the children of Israel 3 times. And Balak was angry, and Balak said, you better get out of here, and I'm not paying you a red cent. But then we come to chapter 25. And many times we read chapter 25, we don't include that as part of the story of Balaam, but it is part of the story of Balaam. If you read chapter 25 and verse 1, it says, while Israel remained at Shittim, the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab. Now what's going on here? Well, Josephus helps us to understand what happens. And if you read the story after hearing what Josephus had to say, go back and look at it, and putting those New Testament texts with the story itself, you'll see the story is very clear. And I'm going to summarize Josephus rather than try to read it because it was long, and so I'm just going to summarize it real quick. But if you're interested, it's in Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 4, and verse 6. And there it's basically summarizing it. He says, after Balaam left Balak, and he was getting closer to home, he had a change of heart. And so he sent for Balak and for the princes of Moab and Midian to come to him. And basically he told them, you know, I'm obligated to you, regardless of what God thinks, I am obligated to you. And so, this is what you need to do. You can't defeat the Israelites by cursing them. You can't defeat the Israelites by going to war against them. You can't defeat the Israelites by asking for God to send some kind of plague against them. Those things aren't going to work. But here's what will work. Take some of your daughters, the ones that are the most beautiful. Send them into the camp of the Israelites. Let them seduce the young men among the camp of the Israelites. And then when they get ready to leave and the Israelites want them to stay, convince them to worship your gods. If you read chapter 25, that's exactly what happens. Let them worship your gods, which included sacrificing children to a pagan god. So here the children of Israel worshiping the pagan god and sacrificing their own children. Do you think God was angry? 24,000 people died that day among the children of Israel. God was angry. And more would have died had it not been for Eleazar the priest, who run a spear through Zimri, one of the Israelites, and Cosbi, the leading woman among the Midianites, who ran a spear through them and killed them, and that stopped the plague God sent. Now in Numbers chapter 31, we find that Moses sends the Israelites to war against the Midianites to get even for what they had done. And in verse 7 and 8 it tells us they killed the men, they killed the kings, they even killed Balaam, because he was there among them. But they brought back the wind. And Moses is angry. Moses said, look at verse 15 and 16, Numbers 31. And Moses said to them, have you spared the women? Behold, these caused the sons of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor. So the plague was among the congregation. Balaam couldn't curse the Israelites, but he knew how to get at them and how to bring them down and how to make God angry. And he told Balak and the Moabites and the Midianites, and they did this, and God was angry and punished them. So, why did Balaam do it? For that blank check. All for that blank check. In Matthew 6:24, Jesus said, no one can serve two masters, for he'll hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. Amen. So, application. How does that apply to us? I mean, if Balaam is mentioned so many times in the Bible, I think it's 7 different places in the Bible. The story here, but then 6 more places in the Bible he mentioned. 3 of those being in the New Testament. If that's true, what is the lesson that we're supposed to get? Well, 1 Timothy 6:10 we read. The love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. Now, some people are going to say, well, that doesn't apply to me because I don't have any money anyway. But guess what? You don't have to have it to love. The defining element is not the amount of money you have, but where is your heart centered? More people love money than they think. So how do I make sure I don't love money? Maybe that's a question we need to answer. How do I make sure that I'm not guilty of the love of money? Well, the first answer would be generosity. Generosity. Generosity is a good indication of how important God is in your life. Proverbs 11:28 says, he who trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like the green leaf. Okay? Don't trust in your riches. In this next slide is a picture of George Pepperdine when he was about 74 years old. George Pepperdine was the founder of Pepperdine University. He was also the founder of Western Auto. Now, those that can remember back a few years can remember that Western Auto used to be in every little town across the United States. You could go to Western Auto anywhere, and you could get whatever you needed, basically, in a Western Auto store. Western Auto made George Pepperdine rich. But when George Pepperdine died, he was broke. Was it because he loved money and he spent it on himself? No. George Pepperdine died broke because he was determined to give his money to the cause of Christ. So on Pepperdine University's campus, you'll find this statue. It's George Pepperdine sitting on a park bench. And if you notice carefully, his Bible is opened under his hand, there on his leg, to his favorite verse in the Bible, which is, freely you have received, freely give. George Pepperdine understood something. Everything we have belongs to God. And he was determined to give it back to God. So generosity is an important way to show you're not guilty of the love of money. But then, secondly, a failure to love money. Now maybe you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't love money. I don't love money at all. But let me ask you this. Is your house full of stuff? Stuff you don't use? Stuff you don't need? But stuff you can't part with? Do you have stuff in a storage bin somewhere that you never go to? Then you have a problem with the love of money. Oh, that's stuff, not money yet. Material possessions, materialism, is the same thing as the love of money. When we have to have so much stuff, there's a problem. And we need to understand what Jesus said in Matthew 19:23, when he said, truly I say to you, it is hard for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. So, the key question then is this. Are we clinging to our money or our stuff? Or are we clinging to God? Which is it? You can't do both. Jesus already told us that. Then we need to be good stewards. You know, lots of people have this question, and the question is this, well, how much should I give to God? And you know the answer that's supposed to come back, well, you're supposed to give 10%. Okay? But is that right? Should we even be asking the question, how much should I give to God? Or would the question be better asked, how much of God's money should I keep for myself? It is God's money, right? Doesn't the Bible say He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills? And doesn't He own the hills as well? And doesn't God own everything? And aren't you only a steward of what God has blessed you with? And maybe you don't have more than what you have just because you're not a good steward of what you have. You ever thought about it that way? Think about the parable of the talents. One had 10, one had 5, one got 1. The one that got 1, what did he do with it? He buried it. When the master came back, what happened? The one that had 10, he gave 10 more. The one that had 5 got 5 more. The one that buried his, he got taken away from him and gave to the one that had 10. So, if you're a good steward, God's going to bless you more. Because God knows you're going to use His money to accomplish His purpose. It is His money. Not yours, not mine. It's His. And we need to remember it that way. It's His. So we need to be good stewards of everything we have. And we need to be careful how we use God's money. Finally, contentment. Hebrews 13:5 says, make sure that your character is free from the love of money, being content with what you have. For he himself has said, I will never desert you, nor I will never forsake you. You catch that? Be content with what you have. Why? Because God's always there for you. Didn't Jesus say, consider the lilies of the field? They neither spin nor toil, but look how beautiful they are. What about the birds of the air? Who takes care of the birds? God. If God take care of grass and lilies and birds, won't He take care of us? Of course He will. We're going to put Him first. So, Lindsay Bell said, those whose heart is in the right place do not focus on what others have. They give thanks for what they've been given. They don't worry about tomorrow, but they enjoy the blessings of today. So put those thoughts together this morning. Balaam is an important warning. Do not love money. So where's your heart? Is it generous? Free from the love of money? Good steward? Content? If not, what is that saying about your heart? Is it saying that your heart needs to find God and to serve Him more completely? This morning, if you're here and you're outside of Christ and you have a decision to make for Him, or if you are a Christian and you need to rededicate your life, or you just need somebody to pray with you, or you want to put your membership in the Bible believing congregation, we're going to sing, Change My Heart, oh God. Won't you come along and sing?